So welcome to what I hope will be the second best debate of the last couple of days. Possibly significantly less chat about eating cats and dogs, maybe no chat about eating cats and dogs, and much more about media effectiveness, advertising, and what we learned from analysing over 9,039 brand lift studies alongside one of the world's biggest attention databases. So to help me do that, I have with me Mike Follett from Lumen Research, who is going to dive into some brand new work. So this is as yet unseen. You were the first people to see this piece of research. Lucky you. Anders Lithner from Brand Metrics, myself and my colleague Deanna from Havas, who is Global Head of Digital. So why are we here? So we've seen lots and lots and lots, and I'm sure if any of you have tested with attention metrics, it's pretty clear that attention metrics correlate higher in terms of performance results. So we see that when we optimize towards more seconds of attention, we see uplifts in some of those performance metrics that we know and love and see in our dashboards in a way that, for example, MRC viewability standards maybe don't do. So James just talked about setting guidelines and guide rails for what effective media can look like in programmatic. This can be a potential solution for that. But what we wanted to do, now even though it seems quite a no-brainer, and people say no-brainer to me a lot, that when you look at media and you look at it for a little bit longer, it's more effective, there are still people in the industry, influential people, that say it doesn't matter and we shouldn't pay attention to this. But what we wanted to do was kind of categorically hit the nail on the head with that one and say, how are attention metrics related to brand outcomes? We know the performance metrics, but what about for brand? What does it do when we optimize towards attention for brand metrics? And what about different brand outcomes? So what's the difference between awareness, consideration, preference, and purchase intent? And then finally, how do we make this really practical, and how do we start to help our clients and the brands that we work with to start building this into how they plan, how they buy, how they create marketplaces based on some of these new guidelines? So that's what we are going to dive into today. So I'm going to ask Anders to come up first and just talk you through the methodology, what these guys do, and then Mike's going to take you through some of those key insights.
Thank you, Jon, and big thank you to Havas for this initiative in the first place. And also I wanted to say we'll be around afterwards, and there'll be a white paper with lots of details, but the data set and the methodology that we're basing today's talking about is just so powerful and rich and unprecedented that it's worth for me spending 1 minute on talking about that. So first, what we've done here is we've kind of joined the world-leading source of attention data, which is Lumen, with the world-leading source of brand lift at scale or consistent brand lift data, which is brand metrics, in a way that lets us ask questions to this data that we haven't been doing before. So Lumen is basing its attention models on the world's biggest, again, world's biggest source or data set of eye tracking data. So we have that, and having trained on all of that data, it means that if Lumen knows some things about the ad size, its viewability time, and the kind of domain where it's been served, they can make very accurate assumption about how much attention people will be giving to that. And then we have the brand metrics data, which brand metrics is a brand lift measurement company, but different from other brand lift measurement companies in various ways. One, it's very, very consistent. So we've been measuring some 35,000 campaigns across thousands of domains in the world, but always measuring the same 4 metrics: brand awareness, brand consideration, so that is the brand in the audience consideration set if they were buying, brand preference, is it the favorite brand, and purchase intent. So we have attention data on the one side and brand lift and intention data, if you will, on the other side. And the other big difference with brand metrics and other vendors is that the data is not going outside of this ecosystem, being collected in like a pre-recruited research panel where you could typically identify people that are exposed to very big campaigns. This is happening in the wild, so all the data collection has been happening in the ecosystem where the advertisement itself has been taking place. So that's another really big advantage. It's consistent, it's happening in the wild, and the reason, or the effect of it's happening in the domains where it's happened is that we also always have access to first-party data. So not only do we know that people have been exposed to a campaign, we also know how many times and for how long each of these exposures have happened in terms of how long has it been viewable on the screen. So when Mike is going to just summarize very soon some of the key findings of this before we talk further, the data set we have here is a subset of the brand metrics database that has all of this information that Lumen needs to come up with an attention model. We have the view time, we know the kind of domain where it happens and so forth. So this subset, as you said, Jon, is some 9,000 campaigns, and the surveys are answered by almost 2 million people that have been viewed loads of impression, and they've been giving loads of attention seconds to these campaigns. The subset in itself is because this first time around, we're focusing on display advertisement, and we're also wanted to make sure that we're using 100% comparable data, also, of course, taking care of user privacy and the integrity of the publisher partners who are anonymized in this. So when Mike is summarizing our findings from this, he's looking at data which has viewability in it, but also viewability time. It has the frequency to which people have been exposed to these campaigns. It has attention, but also attention time. And it has brand lift data in one data set, brand lift in this case being uplift on awareness, consideration, preference, and purchase intent. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Mike to give you some key findings from this.
Very good. Thank you very much. I like this sort of one-by-one thing. I mean, obviously, we're waiting for Deanna. You have to give Deanna the biggest round of applause because she's waited patiently in the dark. My name's Mike. I'm the CEO of Lumen. I just wanted to say, so this is really quite important research. It's easily the largest attention and outcomes data set in the world. And I really do think you're quite privileged to see this because we put the final touches to this presentation yesterday. So it really is literally hot off the press. So much so that Jon had to come armed with a thumb drive to put this on the screen this morning. So it really is new news here, but it confirms some very old insights. And the first thing that you'll be pleased to know is it confirms that looking at ads matters. And the first bit of data here is that attention and brand outcomes are very, very closely correlated. Anders was talking about how across all of these 9,000 studies and 1.8 million individuals who have answered those studies, we have 4 metrics that we ask again and again and again. Awareness, do you even know about this brand? Consideration, would you consider buying it? Preference, this is the brand I would like to buy. And finally, action intent or purchase intent, this is what I'm going to buy. And what you can see here is the average percentage uplift for each of those metrics in terms of attentive time. More time actually looking at the ads, not just viewable, not just the opportunity to see, but actually looking at these things, more time equals better results. Again, this is something that if you were to try to explain to your parents why this is so exciting, they'd go, how long did you spend doing that? Surely this is the case. But the first and most important thing to say is that attention is the vital ingredient to impact of advertising. And it impacts all the metrics. It impacts the biggest percentage point increases we've seen are for awareness, for simple memory. But the second big learning is that attention, more attention, seems to have a bigger effect, a bigger percentage effect on the lower funnel metrics. You can get a lot done with awareness in quite a short amount of time. But the biggest effects that you can see from here are the reverse order of what we've seen here. This is the index versus the baseline of 0 for these results. And we can see that in actual fact, it's preference and action intent, although you can't see action intent because we've put this, the background was black and has now become white, but action intent is, yes, well, there's visual communication for you. The green and the white line, fit together quite well there. So the biggest impact on these things is the more attention you get, the better, deeper, lower funnel results that you get as well. The third thing that we've found is that aggregate time is the most important thing. Attention time in itself is super, super important. The longer you look at things, the better. But thanks to the brand metrics dataset, we've realized that this isn't attention time for each and every ad. This is aggregate time. We often think of ads on their own. Did this one ad work, or did that one ad work? But that's not how people actually engage with brands. They see multiple ads. And most brand lift companies can't compute that. They take one ad as, on their own. Brand metrics is unique in the fact that it can measure if you've been exposed to one ad, or two ads, or three ads, or four ads. And what we have found is that those lines that we were talking about beforehand, that's the aggregate attention across one, or two, or three, or four, or 10 ads. And this is really, really important, because you have to realize that display advertising that we've been talking about here, individually, each ad gets bollocks all attention. But over the course of a campaign, or over the course of a session, you are exposed to 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 of these ads. That's how advertising works. Lots of little slivers of attention, all built up over time. Now, this is super, super important, because sometimes we think of reach as being the be-all and end-all. You just have to reach one person once. This data conclusively proves that in actual fact is not the case. Frequency is super important, because it's frequency that drives the aggregate attention that drives results. This is unusual learnings, given the fact that people like Byron Sharp and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute talk an awful lot about one coverage and actually advocate against frequency. We're finding that the data says the opposite. Frequency is important because, in a sense, frequency drives reach. One of the things that you may have heard me talk about when I've been on stage is that people are very good at ignoring advertising. This is true. Not everyone looks at everything, which is why it's probably worth to give people 3 bright bites of the apple to make sure that something goes in. You need to buy some frequency to get people to notice it in the first place. But you also need to buy some frequency to get people to engage with the ads in aggregate for long enough for them to remember it. Frequency is super important and has been misunderstood. Often, I think, in conferences like this, we're talking about frequency capping, making sure that people aren't exposed to the same ad too many times. I don't think that's as big a problem as we think it is. In actual fact, I think people need multiple opportunities to actually engage with an ad, to be able to build up a sort of mosaic picture and to get something actually stuck in their heads. However, buying multiple ads costs money. So you can't simply assume that you're going to solve the problem just by buying more ads. That does sound something that someone on the sell side might say, that you just need to buy more ads, please. And so what we've also had a look at is that what's the optimal number of ads to buy. And we had is it better to have one ad, and on the top corner here is just one ad, but getting lots and lots of attention? Or is it better to have tons and tons of ads, but absolutely bollocks all attention? And what we find, as ever in life, it's the Goldilocks area that's most important. Your ads have to receive 1 or 2 seconds of attention to be worth anything. But it's better to have one or two, 4 or 5 good enough ads than one massive ad. And this is also the case when it comes to adding in the element of cost. Because it isn't just about whether or not you're getting enough attention, it's about how much you're paying for that attention. And so the final thing that we've been able to see is understand what's the best and most, not just effective, but efficient way of driving outcomes. And it appears, as you'll read in the paper that we're launching on Monday, that there are 2 quite different ways of buying media. If what you want to do is raise awareness and drive consideration, it's probably worth buying lots of little bits of attention. Just being everywhere repeatedly and trying to make sure that you raise the salience of the brand. If, on the other hand, what you want to do is drive preference and action intent, then it might be worthwhile getting out the big guns and buying a single big ad that actually gets some a significant chunk of attention. Like I said, this is really, really important data. We, in rooms like this, debate about this. So, I think it should be this, I think it should be that, largely in an evidence-free environment. It's a lot of feelings about, when I was a TV buyer, I would always buy 3+ coverage or something like that. And you go, how do you know? We're now in a position, by linking the attention data to the outcomes data, to actually know what is the best way of doing it. Instead of having rather circular debates about it, we'll just let the evidence speak. That's why I'm so excited about this. This data, of course, is just the start. We've talked mainly today about the bottom-feeding ads, the display ads, because they're the hardest test case for this. In the next few months, we'll be releasing data on video advertising, on different categories and different objectives. So this really is just the start. But listen, to understand that, we have to also talk to the buy side as well, not just that this is interesting data, but to see what it is that the guys at Havas are most excited about this. So we're really pleased to move on to a more discussion bit. Jon, you wanted to, Deanna is here to give her opinion about this. And
come on over. Mike, guys, thank you very much. I'm super excited about this work because I'm someone that runs attention initiatives within an agency, and the thing I hear most is, we get it, but is it effective? Does it drive better outcomes for brands? Now, this seems pretty conclusive to me. It's why I'm excited about it, to finally kind of move forward and start integrating this into the way that we do things for clients in terms of activation, in terms of planning. And I love all the insights into frequency and effective frequency as well. So you talked about 6 key learnings. So I'm going to go to Deanna first because you're brand new up on the stage. Hi. For you, what's the kind of key learning of the 6, or what's most interesting for you?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Sorry, okay. All right, so I'd have to say for our clients, it'd probably be key finding number 1, where it looks at linking attention to business outcomes. But I'd say from a planner's perspective, ultimately it would be around what Mike had just spoken about, which was really the myth busters around frequency and what we can dial up and dial down as planners. I think we're in the business of, driving clients' businesses forward, looking at the best ways for them to see better outcomes in their media buys. From a planning perspective, if we have those dials to understand, that's the opportunity that we see there. Ultimately, you can't improve what you don't measure, and now we have an opportunity to look at attention measurement, to evaluate our buys, to talk about where can we make those optimizations happen. So for us, I think seeing this type of empirical evidence and being able to bring it to our clients to say, hey, here's what we've seen through, a lot of research. Where do we start testing? Where do we start seeing opportunities to also drive them forward?
Yeah, awesome. Anders, how about you? What's your key takeaway?
I guess my key takeaway is the data itself. I'm so happy that we see these really strong relationships between these two. Means, first of all, your data is good and our data is good. Otherwise, we'd be in trouble if it wasn't the case. But I also see this as such a lovely field where you can grow and cultivate signals for what we decide this future of ad tech is going to be like. There's so many answers we can get out of this data. So I think the data is the most exciting thing. The other one is, I would say, like you said, Mike, is this relationship between time and frequency. It's almost like if you think about getting in shape. Do I run 100 meters every day? Do I run a K per week? Or do I run a full marathon once? And turns out you probably run a K a week, right? That's probably the best way of going about it. But we have some data about it, and it differs depending on the objective.
Yeah, I think the frequency piece has been the biggest missing part of the puzzle to date, I think. So we've had an understanding of average exposure to ads and how that might affect outcomes. But this combined attention piece is really quite new over time. And Mike, your key learning, apart from spend more money on digital ads, which will be very popular in this room, I'm sure. What was yours?
Well, I do think it's about, we've been analysing things by the wrong units. If you analyse everything on the impression level, then display advertising looks crap. But no one ever buys it on that basis, and no one ever consumes it on that basis. You get multiple chances to look at something, and that we should be thinking of things about buying ads in packs of 10 rather than in singles. And then looking at the impact of those things in packs of 10 or packs of 20 or on a campaign basis. Often our data is used to say, look how crap a digital display is, or Facebook is, or YouTube is, versus TV or something. And I think on an individual ad basis, that's true. But when you buy ads from The Guardian or from Ozone or from whoever it is, you buy a pack of them. Similarly, when you buy it from Meta, you buy a pack. That's the unit of analysis that we should be looking at, rather than the rather spurious impression level attribution models that I think no one really takes seriously, but we still all use.
So I think I've certainly felt like I've seen a lot of research studies, case studies around the effectiveness of attention over the past 5 years. What do you think makes this different, and what stand out about this?
Well, but the first thing, for me, and I'm sure it'd be interesting to hear what the other guys say, I think there has been a slight sound of one hand clapping with attention data. You've been talking about impression quality and an attention to each of the ads, but you've often been in isolation from the other bit, the other hand, which is the outcomes. And in actual fact, it's all very well knowing that some media get more attention than other. It's really valuable data, but so what? And this is the so what, you know. That is very exciting for me. And then the second thing is that in doing this analysis, Brand Metrics and Lumen, sponsored obviously by Havas here, you know, and building it into their meaningful media planner and all that, we haven't done this once. This, in some sense, this is proof of the pudding. But in another sense, it is the pudding. We've created a new product that allows Havas and Havas scholars to buy on the basis of outcomes, buy attention on the basis of outcomes, which is what we should have been doing anyway. So that I find very, very useful, that we've instantly gone from talking about it to doing it.
This is an off-piece question, which was not in the pre-vetted question, so apologies if you want to pass it. But you touched on something interesting there. A question I get asked a lot is, why would I optimize towards attention when I could just optimize towards outcomes straight away? Does anyone want to pick that one up? And maybe Deanna or potentially, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that one up, because I think what Mike had just said also kind of triggered in my mind around, we're on this journey in digital media where, if you were an early planner in your stages, you were looking at impressions and clicks, then we moved on to viewability, and now we're going into a stage of, hey, as we get attention from a media perspective, as you get that measurement, how does that also affect your creative side? So a lot of the pilots that we've put on over at Havas with some of our clients has really looked at, okay, we're measuring every platform, we're understanding what is the level of attention that we're getting from various platforms, but we're also making adjustments in how we look at that plan and where do we need to kind of shift dollars, reinvest in certain areas. But we're also opening up the doors and unlocking conversations with our creative agency to talk about the creative itself. Attention isn't just on the media side, it is also part and parcel with, creative as well. So I think from that aspect, where we were 5 years ago and where we're progressing now is the more data that we get, the more insights that we have, we can holistically, shift things for our clients and working across different stakeholders and different groups, because it's not just on media for your campaign's effectiveness, it's also on your creative. So again, I go back to saying, you can't improve something if you can't measure it. And again, this is where this opportunity gives its opportunity, opens it up for more planners to think about, it's not just a signed IO here and there and you're running impressions and you're reporting back on, surface level metrics. You actually do get to talk about more insights to make better decisions for your clients.
Thank you.
I think the other reason why you wouldn't just want to optimize to the outcomes, because outcomes is a lagging indicator of how the campaign's doing. These attention models can be a forward-looking thing. They can help you buy in real time. We're working really closely now with the guys at the trade desk, with Amazon, with Index Exchange, to incorporate our data into the sort of quality signals that they use to go and buy stuff before you've spent the money. So I think the value of this is to really understand how much attention you need to get the job done. I mean, what Anders' company and Brand Metrics has allowed us to do is to understand how much, if my objective is to drive awareness, well, I can do one media strategy. If, on the other hand, it's to drive purchase intent, and different campaigns have different objectives, I'll have a different media strategy. And instead of arguing about it one way or another, we can just slot it into the DSP. Just use it as a target within something like the trade desk, and Bob's your uncle. We can go off and use it as a predictive measure rather than a proof point at the end.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the research. I think it's relatively conclusive that attention time matters. It can drive better outcomes. So let's talk about the implications, because so often we'll walk out of this room and go, yeah, buy that, but now what do we do? So Anders, what do you think the implications for publishers might be of this work if people start to optimize towards attention time as a driver of outcomes? What would you like to see happening?
Yeah, there's more than one answer to that, but I think we keep coming back to that, what's the importance of journalism and how it's tied to democracy and that kind of question. But we could put that aside and just think about the mechanics. So if I was an advertiser, I would spend a lot of money where the consumption is slow, the scroll speed is slow, and where the content matters to people, and where there's a repetitive behavioral. So that sounds a lot like hard news, right? That people come back every day, they scroll slowly. And so I think there's a lot in this data that suggests avoid cheap inventory with no attention time, go for premium.
Yeah, I mean, I like one thing that might have gone missed on the previous slides, that was the optimal frequency one, was actually the harm that low attention at high frequency can cause to brand metrics. So actually negative impact on brand metrics when you're advertising into very low attention or no attention environments, likely to be stuff like MFA or poor quality websites. That actually is negatively impacting the brand. The performance metrics might tell us are delivering, right?
Yes, I think what's interesting about it for me, just the big implication for me as well, is that doing programmatic direct deals with publishers, quality publishers, and buying packs of ads seems like a much better option than we previously thought, because it's very, very important to avoid websites where people are just skimming frantically and the ads are on screen for a minuscule amount of time. I don't know if it necessarily negatively impacts things. It certainly doesn't positively impact them. But you only see benefits by getting a sufficient amount of time. And it seems to me, from all the other data that we've got, that is quality journalism that delivers that. It'll be really interesting to see and for us to share the results for video advertising, which will be happening later in the year.
So it sounds like you're a fan of the idea of curation, right?
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
the previous session.
And I strongly advise you to use an attention filter on your curation. I think that's smart.
And Deanna, I want to finish with you on implications for agencies and the brands that you work with. So you work with lots of global clients. Like, what do you think the implications of this are for planning and for activation in the digital space?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I jumped ahead and actually probably used that answer in the earlier off-piece question. But yeah, I think I just go back to the fact that we've got this data available in front of us. We have it at real time. It's not necessarily something that you have to wait from a post-campaign perspective. So it's making adjustments to your campaigns, working with your publishers to talk about, how do you bring a meaningful media experience to your consumer. So understanding, through the data, where is that optimal frequency level? How do you can then, adjust your campaigns as needed? So it's really just kind of, again, having that data available to you really allows for us to make those changes and strategically think about, moving forward in, future plans, what is the optimal levels that we need to look at?
Yeah, I think that piece around the classic misconception you hear is more attention is always better. This shows you it's around finding optimal levels of reach, attention, and frequency to drive outcomes, right? Yeah. So, guys, look, thank you very much. We're out of time. More on video advertising coming next. We've got more kind of issues of this study coming along. White paper will be released on Monday if I get my act together and edit it. So that'll be out on Monday. Thank you very much, and thanks, guys, for joining me. Thank you.